Hey guys, Dave Keller here with Market Misbehavior. I look at a series of indicators to try to understand the overall market dynamics, the conditions under the hood of the S&P 500. So as the S&P 500 is doing a certain thing or whatever benchmark I'm looking at, what are the stocks that make up the S&P? What are they actually doing? And this is called market breadth, where you look at participation and try to understand how the stocks that comprise an index, what they're actually doing and how that relates to the index itself, because as we'll see, a lot of times at the end of a move, the price indication of the benchmark, the S&P 500, and the breadth indications can actually diverge, and that's one of the situations we're actually seeing right now in the market environment. So today we're going to answer the question: what is the Bullish Percent Index? So my macro investment process involves three key steps: price, breadth, and sentiment, and they're in that priority order. It starts with the chart of the S&P 500. I was told by one of my mentors, probably many of my mentors early on, if you want to understand, if you had one thing to understand the S&P 500, it should be a chart of the S&P 500. Just price, that's it, because that tells you a great deal. But after that, I think if you want to understand the dynamics underlying the movements in the overall market, you want to start looking at market breadth. And breadth is another word basically for participation. How are the stocks that make up the indexes actually participating in the up move or down move? And a lot of times at the end of a phase, at the end of a bullish phase or the end of a bearish phase, you'll get a disagreement. And the breadth indicators are often a better indication of, or a better take on the performance of the underlying stocks. The index itself kind of reflects the actions in the individual stocks a little later. So before we get to that, to the charts where we focus on one particular breadth indicator called the Bullish Percent Index, I just want to remind you, if this sort of thinking about technical analysis, investor decision-making, behavior, routines, breadth, sentiment, price, momentum, trend, etc., if that's of interest to you, I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. It'd be great to have you along this ride with us. Also, give the video a thumbs up if you appreciate it. We would very much appreciate that back. Finally, put a comment below the video. Do you feel that the next 10% move in the S&P 500 from here will be higher or lower, and why? Let's get to the charts. So as I mentioned in the introduction, there are a series of breadth indicators, and we've talked about them, on this channel randomly at different times. There are many of them. Things like the cumulative advanced decline lines, things like percent of stocks above their moving averages, above their 50-day moving average, for example, are all very good. But this particular breadth indicator is called the Bullish Percent Index. It's actually based on point and figure charts. So what we're going to do is start with a very simple primer on what point and figure charts are. Then we're going to go to the chart of the Bullish Percent Index, and you'll understand, I hope, why it makes sense right now. This is a chart of Apple, and it is not a normal traditional bar or candle chart where you have price versus time, the y-axis being price and the x-axis being time. Most charts we look at have that configuration. This is showing price on the y-axis, as a normal bar chart does, but the x-axis is not based on time. So each column does not represent one day or 1 week. It actually measures trends. So when the market is in a trend, when Apple's in an uptrend, you have a column of X's. When the price reverses a certain amount, you go to the next column over, and you start a column of O's, and you go down. X's are uptrends, O's are downtrends. So what we've basically done is strip the time out of the picture. Each column could be 1 day, 1 year, it doesn't matter. It's all based on the trend. In a column of X's, as long as the market keeps going higher, you keep adding a column of X's. I'll probably do another video or a series of videos later on this channel digging into point and figure charts in a little more detail. But very simply, this is designed and really popularized on the trading floors in Chicago, where it was very difficult to be charting things manually during the trading day. And so doing it on a column of X's and O's was very easy to keep up on graph paper. You could just spend a couple minutes at the end of every day and update all of your point and figure charts, and you had a sense of what the trends were. The particular technique we're going to talk about, called Bullish Percent Index, was we're basically taking these charts and turning them into a breadth indicator. Just like we look at the percent of stocks above their 50-day moving average, here we're actually looking at the percent of stocks in a particular universe with their point and figure charts in a specific configuration. This indicator was actually created by Abe Cohen, and a lot of, if you've used point and figure charts today, you probably are inspired by Abe's work or by people who were inspired by Abe's work. So he really popularized this technique with a lot of investors and a lot of technical analysts. So very basically, the buy signal on a point and figure chart is when you have a column of X's that goes higher than the previous column of X's, right? So here, where you have a column of X's, we were in a downtrend, and then all of a sudden you have a column of X's that goes higher than the previous column of X's. That is a buy signal called a double top breakout. That indicates a rotation from distribution to accumulation. So you had a sell signal here where a column of O's went below the previous column of O's. And then you finally have a buy signal here when you have a column of X's that goes higher than the previous column. This is indicating a rotation back higher. So Apple most recently is on a buy signal. It has had a column of X's breaking above the previous column of X's. So this chart overall is on a buy signal. So if you look at the entire S&P 500, Apple is in a buy signal. Okay, you go to the next one. You go through all 500 charts. And this indicator right here called the Bullish Percent Index tells you that 65% of the S&P 500 members, just like Apple, are in a buy signal right now on their point and figure charts, which means 35% are on a sell signal because it's binary. You have to be one or the other. So it's interesting to note back here in April, and this is the S&P 500 at the bottom, as the S&P was making new highs into April, you can see that about 85% of the S&P members were in a buy signal on their point and figure charts. Pretty good. And, there are 15% that weren't, probably things like consumer staples and others that were sort of laggards at that time. But look at what has happened April, May, June, July, as the S&P keeps making new all-time highs. You can see the Bullish Percent Index is actually sloping downwards. So it's actually an indication that the breadth is deteriorating. Every time the S&P goes higher, more and more stocks, more and more S&P members are actually getting a sell signal from their point and figure charts and actually indicating worsening situation, right? Worsening conditions. The real key is when it breaks below this 70 level, which is the red line here. That's what's called a bear alert. When the Bullish Percent Index is above 70, it breaks below the 70 level. That indicates that although the conditions had been strong, showing broad advance driven by a lot of individual stocks, over 2/3 of the members, the fact that it's broken below 70 tells you it's a bear alert. It's an indication that the conditions are deteriorating. The breadth is starting to get worse. And the idea is this. At the end of a bullish move, you have everything kind of going higher, pushing the market higher. Toward the end of the move, though, some stocks start to fall off, right? They start to roll over as investors start to take profits, usually on the riskier stuff, the high beta names. That's what causes their point and figure charts to register a sell signal. So while the index is still going higher because investors are sort of piling into the relative defense of mega cap stocks that are able to propel the S&P further to the upside, a lot of the individual names are starting to break down. That's the condition that we're actually finding ourselves in right now. I've actually described the current market environment since April as being in a stealth correction, which basically means the index is going higher. So if you look at the chart of the S&P 500, you wouldn't assume we're in any sort of correction. But if you look at a lot of individual charts, you'll see that the patterns are actually quite corrective. And some of the charts in cyclical sectors have actually come down a decent amount from their all-time highs in March, April, May. Now, I should point out a couple things here. Number one, this Bullish Percent Index was actually designed to be charted on a point and figure chart itself. So some of the nuances really are specific to point and figure charts. I look at so many bar charts during the day. I like having this part of my regular breadth routine that I look at. So I show it on a bar chart just as a line, as a very easy way to make sense of it. You can always chart this on a point and figure chart, and then you're actually able to, it shows the cyclical nature of the Bullish Percent Index actually beautifully and helps you understand the signal. So that's one thing to note. Second thing to note is we're looking at this on the S&P 500, but actually if you look at a place like StockCharts, there are Bullish Percent Indexes for a number of things, different indexes, some sector ETFs or sector indexes and industry groups like gold and others. So what I'm actually doing is sorting this in descending order, all the Bullish Percent Indexes from the most bullish, which are right now in information technology, real estate, and the old telecom sector, down to the worst, which is energy, transportation, gold miners, and the NASDAQ. So by looking at this, you can actually see the cyclical nature of leadership, the leadership rotation by how the Bullish Percent Indexes are fluctuating. There was a time when it was over 90% of the financial sector were in a bullish configuration. It's now down to about 52%, which shows the how the leadership of financials has certainly dissipated, with now 1 in 2 stocks in that group, in that sector, in a sell configuration. If you want to learn more about the Bullish Percent Index and point and figure charting as well, on StockCharts.com at the very top, go to charts and tools and look at our help pages, actually search, sorry, this little magnifying glass in the upper right might be an easier way to get to it. Just type Bullish Percent Index. You'll get to this article, which explains the background of how Abe Cohen designed this breadth indicator based on point figure charts. A little more examples on how to interpret some of the signals. But that is the Bullish Percent Index and how it is less constructive than you may think about the S&P 500 right now. Okay, so that is the Bullish Percent Index. And again, it's a fantastic breadth indicator that I've used for years based on point and figure charts. And point and figure charts are a fantastic way to strip noise out of a data series, noise out of the price movements, and just focus on the trends. A lot of traders and investors have used those charts for years and years, including myself at times. The Bullish Percent Index is a breadth indicator based on those point and figure charts. In the last couple months, really since April, as many other breadth indicators as well. For example, the percent of stocks above their 50-day peaked at around the same time in April. Since then, we've seen a deterioration in breadth as more and more charts are actually switching into a sell signal on their point and figure chart, signaling what's called a bear alert. If this sort of thinking about technical indicators, charts, behavioral finance, decision-making, routines, trend, momentum, breadth, sentiment, if those sorts of things are of interest to you, I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. It'd be great to have you along this ride with us. Also, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. We would very much appreciate that back. Finally, I want to encourage you to put a comment below the video. Do you think the next move in the S&P 500 will be, the next 10% move will be higher or lower, and why? For everyone here at Misbehavior, I'm Dave Keller. Be safe, be well. Talk to you again soon.